It wouldn't be an episode of the Holy Donut Revival Hour if the goblins didn't eat our intro, right? We'll start off by talking about a friend that came to town.
Just to begin with the Holy Donut Revival Hour, Goblins be gone!
Darcy and I hadn't really talked a lot, but we got on like a piece of carrots. That was a really neat surprise to hit it off that well with her. We had a good time.
Yeah, it's cool. You never know what to expect when you're meeting people that you only know from the internet.
We had a good time. We went to the world's largest garage sale. I wanted to go to see if I wanted to sell at it in April. The answer is yes, if I don't have a nervous breakdown when I'm there, because it was complete madness. Complete madness. It was hot. It was sweaty. Like Darcy and I and like two other sellers that were there, we're the only ones with the masks on. Like, when you get a spot and it's so muggy, you just like start dripping. There were 2 ballrooms with it. We didn't even look at a third of it. It was just crazy. And of course, I kept running into reseller friends there, which was really funny. Got some interesting books and magazines.
Yeah.
There was this lady. It started out because there was a lady. We'll kind of get into this because kind of the part of the synchronicity machine has been just cranking up overdrive for you. Like, we pretty much knew this would happen.
It's a constant for me anyway.
Right. And so when you combine the both of us, it's like we knew it was just going to be.
And if you throw an Alan effing Greenfield book in the mix, that really cranks things up a notch.
I have not gotten Alan's most recent book, which is Making Your Life Very Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I read it all pretty much in a day or two because it was that kind of book. It was interesting enough. I think he's co-written it with Olav Phillips. Part of me is like, I don't know which parts were written by whom, but then again, Alan has a very distinctive style, so you can kind of tell when it's Alan writing. I think you'll really like it. It's got a whole chapter on Twin Peaks, which is a pretty interesting take on it for sure.
I watched Twin Peaks when it was on TV. I had a regular babysitting job back when I was in high school. This family, they had like season tickets to a local basketball team. And so I just got hooked on Twin Peaks, and that, kids would be in bed and I'd start watching it. And I just had always been fascinated by that show and really, really loved it. And it seems like every time I rewatch it, I notice something else. It's one of those things that just gets weirder the longer that you look into it and dig into it. And huge fan of Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks and Hannibal are probably the 2 TV shows that I have absolutely zero chill over.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, Twin Peaks is strange. Like you say, it changes depending on where you are in life.
Mhm.
I didn't watch it when it was on, and I think it would have really messed with my head watching it younger. But I watched it as an adult. And I kind of like had heard so much about it by that point that it kind of ruined some of the magic, because like I know the behind the scenes a little bit on season 2. David Lynch basically wasn't involved. Like he wasn't really there for that. And so I think that might have colored my reaction going into it, where I'm like, there are things I really didn't like about season 2. Well, there's less Lynch involved, it just seems to be ambling and not going anywhere like the first season did. I really disliked season 3, like The Return.
Really?
I didn't like it at all. So I might have to revisit it, because thinking about it now, like I rewatched Fire Walk with Me somewhat recently. And there was a lot I didn't like about that as well. But then rewatching it, I'm like, wait, no, some of this is really brilliant, and I didn't catch it the first time.
I love the soundtrack to Fire Walk with Me. Love
Yeah.
it. Like all that really dark bluesy, like the Red Room, and I am so into that soundtrack.
I don't know, it's kind of like the Cramps on Quaaludes or something.
No wonder I like it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
That was one thing I didn't like about season 3. I didn't
Yeah.
like the soundtrack. It really took me out of it that they used a lot of popular songs.
Right. Well, they had Chromatics. I like the Chromatics. They had a few, and the Nine Inch Nails song was dope.
Well, right, but they were using a lot of classic songs that were recognizable, where in the original series, it was, like, a lot of kinda laid back jazz in the background.
Right.
Less identifiable stuff. Kind of distracting to me to have, like, Take 5 playing during a scene by Dave Brubeck. I'm like, why is it Take 5? Like
Well, Twin Peaks was the first time that baby me ever learned about what tulpas were. It's because of Dale Cooper.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So, like, it was integral to my, like, growth into weird crap, as there we go again. Grandma's freaking having a seizure. And I keep going back and forth about what season 3 is kind of communicating. And of course, I bought all the books, I'm that nerd. And the whole like frog moth thing, that possesses Sarah and Bob. And I haven't quite figured that all out yet. I need to watch that episode where it's like the big black and white like nuke scene that's like drugs, and just really pay attention when the mother comes, floating down. Like, it's so weird. You see the little horns, like, so
Well, see, I liked that episode. Could have been like a standalone thing. And like I kind of hate talking about this stuff because I feel like I just make people mad that enjoyed it.
that's all right. Yeah. And then when we were so Darcy and I were at the sale, we got distracted talking about Twin Peaks. I got distracted. That's what happens to my brain. There was a lady that had a table full of books, and she had stacks of old Fate magazines, and she had like multiples. Or these are going to be freaking cheap. I'm at the garage sale, whatever. And this irritates me more than anything else. If you are a seller and I am a seller, someone comes up and buys something and it doesn't have a freaking price tag on it, you do not do a Google reverse lookup and say, well, retail's going for about $13 on Amazon. Darcy's gone. She's like 3 booths down because she saw the writing on the wall. So Darcy pieces out and I'm starting to piece out, and I'm like, yeah, well, thanks. And the lady's like, oh, well, I have some other books that are only $2 that, if you want to look at those. So I'm like, yeah, sure. And I pull them out, and it's some of the weird old paperbacks and stuff that I like. And there's this insane Timothy Leary thing from the 60s. Like, like the super high weird stuff. And I'm like, heck yeah, that's awesome. And I decide, she's like, oh yeah, we have a bunch more of these online. And she goes to hand me her card, and I wasn't even going to take it. So I was like, you're just going to try to retail. Like, this isn't any fun. And then I noticed that the name of her business was St. Germain Treasures. And I started just cracking up because of course it's St. Germain Treasures.
Yeah.
That's a synchronicity thread that AP has been following for months and months and months and months and months, right? And so I clearly needed to just stop at that booth in the chaos to get that little nod.
Well, yeah. I feel like there's a lot in tandem with, again, the Nonsense Bazaar we mentioned on the last episode for the KLF episode, but that's been their running theme forever, has been tracing the adventures of the Count of Saint Germain, all the way up through like the I Am movement and into the Church Universal and Triumphant and New Agey stuff and Theosophy and like all the places that the Count of Saint Germain pops up. So they have like a bunch of series of episodes on this that you can go check out and get into. But where it came up for me recently, and I hit them up in their Discord because I'm like, been on this Cagliostro rabbit hole, which happened as a result of looking into Universal Monsters. This is pretty wild because by way of Universal Monsters, this is the synchronicity thread. We're just going to jump
Here we go. We're going in.
I'm going to babble like a maniac at you about it. And this is an example of not just synchronicity, but serendipity. It's when you're researching this stuff, and when I talk about feeling like I'm being pulled toward a subject or coaxed along, or there's some unseen hand pushing me my way, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
because we talked about Universal Monsters a little bit in the last episode, hence the title. But at the time I was already kind of working on writing a post for my blog, which I feel like not as many people read as I would have liked, but them's the breaks when you're a writer. When I wrote that one, I'm like, oh, this is dense. I'm like, and I have to condense it. I am conscious of that. Like, people have limits on their time, but I try to take my writing very seriously. So I try to straddle that sweet spot where you can read it in one sitting, but it contains a lot, If I have to just write about one thing, I'm going to get very bored. So I have to like put all these various threads together. So that one, as you well know, and as my long-suffering colleague in Kookonomy, Stephanie Quick, knows, because I was bugging her constantly while I was writing it. I was really sweating it with that Universal Monsters thing because it was getting too big and too conceptual. And I'm like, I need to shrink it down. At any rate, people can go read that. Just carve out a good 10 minutes to read it. It's probably about how long it takes. In the process of looking at the 1932 The Mummy starring Boris Karloff, I found out that it was originally supposed to be a movie about Cagliostro with Karloff playing Cagliostro, which that kind of blew my mind because I'm like, wow, Cagliostro, really? That's
Yeah.
and I love whenever I see that name in print, just when I come across it. Like I found it in old magic books. Like stage magicians would love to just tack his name onto whatever their trick was to make it sound like dark and mysterious.
Yeah.
Like Cagliostro's talking skull, you know. That led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, like, okay, I vaguely remember reading about Cagliostro, but I think I might be confusing him in my mind with Agrippa on some level, or maybe, because, all these magicians, they kind of meld together after a while. So, I go down this whole rabbit hole. I take out my Colin Wilson history on the occult. I think that was the third resource I went to after I read two other like brief biographies of Cagliostro. And for those who don't know, if you've seen the name before, you might have pronounced it Cagliostro because there's a G in there, but it's an Italian name. So Alessandro di Cagliostro, general consensus is he was actually born Giuseppe Balsamo, and he was like a con man in Palermo, Italy, and kind of reinvented himself as Cagliostro. I read three or four different biographical sources on him, and there's conflicting ideas about almost all of his story, is one of those characters, and this is like the 1700s. Of course, I find these bigger, larger than life personalities like fascinating, and I got put off like a whole week pretty much from writing this thing that I was trying to write because I went on this little Cagliostro side quest.
Yeah.
One of the I tracked down some of the sources and ended up finding one in French on archive.org that talked about the Count of Saint Germain initiating Cagliostro into the Illuminati in the late 1700s, and I was like, this is awesome. So that's where I kind of hit the nonsense bazaar. I'm like, look who pops up here. If you are able to read the French language, check this out. Yeah, so I got all excited about it, but then I had to kind of put Cagliostro on the back burner. And as I'm writing the Universal piece, Alan Greenfield's book shows up, and there were synchronicities between what I was writing and what's in the book. Now, his book is The Black Lodge Revealed, like the real Black Lodge revealed. So, a lot of the themes he was talking about with the hidden hand of the Black Lodge influencing people, and particularly the school of necromancy that Dracula went to, Sholamansa, was referenced in the book. Greenfield also mentions a book called The Masters Revealed, Madame Blavatsky and the Myth of the Great White Lodge as a reference. So I looked this book up, and it's a book about how rather than just being complete myth and made up or being like real supernatural figures, the masters and Mahatmas that Blavatsky talks about were kind of like exaggerated versions of real historical people. And this book like painstakingly tracks all the people she interacted with. So I'm reading this book. Now, while I had been reading about Cagliostro, I started like drawing comparisons between him and Madame Blavatsky. I'm like, his story is very similar to Blavatsky's. I'm like, they're kind of in the same spiritual current, as it were. And then I'm reading this book and I'm realizing that actually she's kind of like a direct descendant of Cagliostro in his magical practices. Like there was a ton of references to Cagliostro and all these like slight references, like just referencing a part of Cagliostro's life, like the diamond necklace affair, and just assuming you know what that is. And I do because I spent like a whole weekend reading about Cagliostro for no reason. I was led there because of Boris Karloff.
Magic
So
and
this
the
is what I
power of a
mean.
mummy.
Yeah, synchronicity and serendipity in a way. Yeah, and that's the funniest part is it's the mummy. And like Cagliostro in the essay I wrote, I kind of made the comparison between the mummy character and Cagliostro. And he was Cagliostro was the one that started the Egyptian rites within Freemasonry. And he claimed this like Egyptian heritage. And sort of like Count of Saint Germain, some people thought he was like an ageless figure. But yeah, this is just a wonderful and long-winded example of how for like basically no reason at all, I read all about this 18th century magician and like went way down a rabbit hole with him.
And then he pops up in a book.
Yeah, and then I'm reading this book and I'm like, if I hadn't had that background, if I didn't have the context for what I'm reading now, I'd be a little bit lost. I wouldn't really know. I'd have to stop reading this book and go find that stuff. So
Right.
it's kind of awesome that I got that out of the way, even though it forestalled the thing I was trying to write. So it's like this weird, it's a time loopy thing where things that you read are going to you can just suddenly be inspired to go down a rabbit hole somewhere and find out that you're gonna cross that path again pretty soon, and it's good that you had that background already, you know?
Totally. And of
So
course, one of the books that I bought yesterday from St. Germain's Treasures was a Blavatsky book.
right, you got the abridged version of The Secret Doctrine,
Yeah, just for an
which is
extra
probably
nudge.
yeah. Yep. So pretty wild that yeah, and then you bought this from St. Germain's Treasures, and that whacked out '60s book that you bought, the
Incredible.
editor yeah, the editor of the book is named Hilarion, or he calls himself Hilarion, and that was one of the masters.
Blavatsky's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of Blavatsky's masters was named Hilarion. So
I'm definitely not on enough drugs to understand that book. Like, I read it and was like, I was like, should I be licking the paper to have a hallucinogenic experience here? Because this is literally just babble. It's like, I don't understand. And they're awfully, really super concerned about population control. And I'm
yeah,
like, well, that's a valid concern, but like, they seem like, it's all this like love, light, brotherhood, except don't y'all be banging and making these babies. And it's like, whoa, like,
yeah, I feel like that's something that was maybe a fringe teetering on the mainstream concern back then, like
mm,
'60s and '70s was like, "Oh, if we keep expanding at this rate, we're not gonna." But if you think about it, that's when the baby boom was like just before that, like the '50s. So, yeah, I mean, if you did continue having baby boom after baby boom, then probably they were projecting based on that birth rates from the 1950s and '60s,
right.
So that but that was one of those concerns, like California breaking off and drifting into the ocean. I think that was another one in the '70s that was
Yeah.
on
Earthquake's gonna
people's mind.
come and
Right.
break you all. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, wacky '60s and '70s, swamis and stuff. Um, the Eastern mysticism is pretty wild. Uh, there's a lot to grok if you're gonna read that stuff, so
Yeah. And I just don't think I would speak that brand of weird. I speak other brands of weird though. Like, let me tell you, should we talk about Asherah?
sure.
How do we even like okay, this is the stuff where it's like, yeah, we're gonna sound insane. Again, whatever this is, likes the hilarious magic. So I'm wearing a fez and I'm ringing a summoning bell and I'm saying all praise to Ishtar.
The book is full of testimonials of people that have used the power of Ishtar to solve their problems. Like this one from GW, a widow in her early 70s living alone. I pulled a muscle in my right thumb yesterday, and it was very painful. This morning I could barely move my thumb, and it looked like it would be a very painful day just doing the bare survival necessities. I went to my altar and went through the touching of the 8 power points of the Ishtar power star, asking for help at each one. My thumb was healed immediately. It turned out to be a glorious day with many extra happy accomplishments.
Incredible. All praises.
Reading about the Ishtar power star,
Mhm.
and she's just louder and louder all the time. Well, she really okay. I go back and forth on this because everybody knows like I do the junking thing and the thrifting thing. And yes, there's magic involved. Like a lot of people have been like, you have a thrift servitor. No, I didn't make a thrift servitor. Like this is just a thing. It's just a phenomenon. Well, something that I started doing about a year ago is I noticed I kept finding like religious articles, not just the Catholic, but like I found a Nauvoo temple thing from the Mormons, and I was like I was finding lots of Egyptian things, and sort of as a joke, there's a shelf out in my living room, and I haven't really talked about it. I've talked about it with you, and I call it the altar of the Thrift Gods.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that's on this altar is something that I either got from a thrift, an estate sale, a garage sale, a free pile, you know what I mean? Just objects that for whatever reason I was attracted to or knew who they were, etc. So I have this shelf, that's the Thrift Gods, and I've been joking about the Thrift Gods, whatever, but that whatever this phenomenon is real. And one of the things that was on the Thrift Gods shelf is this little statue. It's from Turkey. It's a replica from Ephesus Artemis, but it's basically Asherah. And that's the first time that I started learning about Asherah when I was getting into the Egypt stuff, because I know that Egypt all kind of goes back to Babylon. But I found her really interesting because all of these things that are on her chest, a lot of people assume that those are breasts because she's the mother of all. But those are actually testicles. Asherah is she's the mother, but she has like the power of the men. She's more of like a non-binary type of mother. And the fact that there was a gender swap in that goofy book that you've been reading, I'm sure is because of the iconography of her being sort of like a more gender neutral sort of mother goddess. So about, what was it? Oh, well, probably a week later, a friend of mine sent me an article about there's a town that's about an hour away from Quebec. And any of you that know about my quote nun stuff, I tried to keep it out of this, but it's going to happen. I was like, I wasn't trying to cross the streams, but it's going to cross the streams. We're just going to have to deal with it. And it's talking about how there is a controversy in this town because some people were painting some art murals on a brick wall, and one of them happened to have a rainbow for pride, for, whatever. And the local people, one of the local government people just absolutely flipped out. And as he's like this crazy preacher guy, and he says basically that the gays are summoning Asherah with our sinner rainbows. Guilty.
Oh yeah, he's
guilty as charged, mofo.
Right. Yeah. So this is Littleton, New Hampshire, and I can tell you as a New Englander that when you get into New Hampshire, it's really kind of the south of the north. New Hampshire and parts of Maine, like they're definitely the south of the north, of the Northeast. But yeah, so there's a local person in local government that's very offended and wants this kind of mural and any LGBTQI plus, whatever, positive stuff banned. But the town is refusing to do that because they're just like, well, we can't discriminate and ban one type of art. So it's actually on the table in this town that they're going to ban all art just to make sure kids don't accidentally see something gay.
Yeah, because it's summoning
Ishtar.
An Ishtar.
Yeah. Ishtar power.
So I'm like, hey, I'm into
the
this.
bigots.
That's it. So yeah, we apparently summoned some Ishtar homophobe action, which I'm here for it. I hope she absolutely destroys them. And again, like, you might think it's all BS, but it's just funny because we joke about stuff. All praise to this god, and wham, she's in the news.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's this politician is a follower of a preacher named Khan, who theorized that Ishtar was brought back into the world after the Stonewall protests. So, that's
Stonewall started with the brick.
That's true. Yeah. I didn't even think of that.
It did.
An airborne brick,
The bricks say gay rights. I'm extremely pleased by this turn of events, with Asherah causing some problems for some homophobes.
I mean, I feel bad now for making light of the Ishtar power with like fixing TVs and making a little old lady's thumb stop hurting, but
hey, her powers are mysterious. All praise. So who
Yeah,
knows
but I
what's
mean,
gonna happen next?
the Ishtar thread's one I've been on for quite a while. When I was in Maine this summer, I went to the Green Hand bookstore and I bought a old Fate magazine from July of 1952. It was the July issue, 1952, and Ishtar's on the cover. It's a photo of Ishtar, well, a painting of Ishtar with a lion, a normal depiction of Ishtar. She's a white lady, I guess. That's
Yeah.
normal for 1952.
Yep.
But do you know what else happened in July of 1952?
What?
That was the very month on July 18th, during the dog days of summer, that George Van Tassel first received his transmissions from Ashtar Galactic Command. So, like John Keel had noted, and then probably other people noted before him, but there's a confluence between the name Ishtar and the demon Astaroth, and other names from, the ancient times, like Ashtaraleth and Ashtaroth was another one. Asherah is another version of that, but it goes back to Ishtar, and prior to that, Inanna. So there's this whole like ancient thread of this. I've had a million synchronicities around this because the Ashtar stuff is stuff I've been looking at for years and
Long time,
years.
yeah.
But it's
Long
kind of wild to think that the very month that George Van Tassel claims contact from Ashtar Galactic
it's
Command,
on the cover.
yeah, Ishtar's on the cover of Fate magazine.
I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole too, similarly. Um, just thinking about the thing that I really like about Neil Gaiman's American Gods is his concept of like the gods exist when you even think about them or acknowledge, you know what I mean? You don't have to necessarily do traditional worship. And when they're forgotten, their powers are forgotten and they just sort of, go into the background and wait for somebody to remember. That was
mhm.
also kind of like Hellier, right? They summoned the Pan and, it was like, oh, Pan's back, like Pan's everywhere now. In that same sort of vein, I was fed in the YouTube algorithm the other day. I had forgotten that there was an actual American goddess called Columbia.
Mhm.
And of course, everybody knows Columbia Pictures, the lady with the tour, before a movie and whatnot. But I'd forgotten that that was actually considered a goddess. And she came about, being the spirit of the new America and was thought to like unite the spirit of America. And like everybody, it was like Uncle Sam, but not like war related, you know what I mean? And it was like, it was taken, of course, racist beginnings because everybody thought Columbus discovered the new world. Yeah, no, whatever. So, but they named her Columbia and it used to be like a big deal. And then she just sort of was forgotten. It's one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, like the name Columbia is kind of unfortunate, but yet I'm out here on the West Coast. We have a Columbia River. Everything's Columbia out here, right? And yeah, it's Columbus. It's the colonizer name, whatever. What happens? What happens if we start talking about Columbia when everybody is divided right now? Do we need Columbia to come back?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know, but
legit.
then what form will she take is the weird
Right.
thing. 'Cause you mentioned Uncle Sam, and, not too long ago, I was stuck in traffic behind a Mack truck that had a big picture of Uncle Sam, and it said, "I want you to go to church or to pray." It was one of those 2 things, and I'm like, "See?" There's just, like, a long sigh, like, "Ah."
Well, you know what? I have a Beavis and Butthead shirt where Beavis is, oh no, Butthead, excuse me, is dressed up like Uncle Sam, and he says, "I want you to pull my finger."
That's brilliant. But,
So
but I mean, that's the thing is we project things onto, like, these folkloric and mythological figures that, become whatever we want it to be.
yeah,
And it's just kinda like, you do realize that the Uncle Sam thing, that's just iconography of it was supposed to be, like, a patriotic thing, like, love your America, not it's not a religious thing, and then you conflate the 2, and it just plays into this whole thing like, "Okay, let's say it again. The freedom of religion means we don't all have to be Christian here.
right.
We really don't. Like, that's not a prerequisite for being an American. It's really not, you know? Um, So it's crazy. When I see something like that, it's just like my mind goes in all these different directions, and I just feel like giving up because I'm just like, why does somebody have an Uncle Sam telling me to go to church? Like,
Yeah,
why is that? Why do you have that?
I
But
don't know.
he
Yeah,
was
it's like
based
this.
on a real person, though. Uncle Sam was actually a real person.
Most
He
of
was.
these icons like were like Rosie the Riveter was a real. She was actually from Longview, Washington, just up
Mhm.
the road. So she was a local girl. But it's interesting to see how yeah, icons of America or of society, modern society, just sort of shift and then are forgotten over time. Feel like maybe Ishtar is one of those. She's just dying to come out.
Well, she's been there for a long, long time. I mean, that's the thing is, I think some of the earliest narratives and poetic writings we have were from Enheduanna.
Okay.
She was a priestess of Inanna and daughter of Sargon the Great. And yeah, I mean, some of the earliest writings that exist in the world, the earliest poems and narratives that we have are from Enheduanna, who was writing like prayers to Inanna and narratives of Inanna and stories like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, and Inanna in the form of Ishtar, I think, plays a role in Epic of Gilgamesh, which is like the first epic story that we
That's where
have
she came on my radar.
near completeness. And she appears in the Ugaritic Bale cycle as Astarte. So,
Yeah.
or Astarte, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but
Yeah.
nobody that spoke these ancient Semitic languages are still around to correct me. So
Totally.
screw it.
We're just making it up.
Yep,
Doing the best we can.
yep, yep.
I don't know.
Ancient mythology, people.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
certainly not an expert, but it's really not. It's such fun stuff to look into.
Absolutely. And that's it, is this stuff just chains off. It's like a chain off of each other. You just get curious and start digging. Oh, I put it right here so I wouldn't forget. I have something very exciting. One of our very loyal cult members, Sherry, sent me a holy transmission in the mail.
What?
Potluck with Elvis. Okay.
That's a
And,
wild picture of Elvis. He does
right?
not look like he was ready for that photo.
And I told her, I was like, okay, this is magic, because I literally have 50 plus Elvis records on that shelf out there in the living room that, were my father's, the ones I've added to over time. Not this
Yeah.
one.
Wow.
Kiss Me Quick is on here. So what would you bring to a potluck with Elvis? He was very anti-marijuana, so I can't say that he only liked amphetamines. So I can't say that I would bring pot to my potluck with Elvis, because I'd probably get kicked out.
I'd bring some fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches with bacon on them.
That's pretty good. I just read that Jacob, I'm going to mess up his last name, Elordi, I think, the kid that's doing the Elvis and the Priscilla movie, he
Yeah.
just said in an interview that he ate a pound of bacon a day to method act.
Wow.
That's a lot of freaking bacon.
Yeah, he couldn't have been feeling too good after that.
Yeah.
That's like
There's a lot
Ron
of
Swanson.
controversy over that movie, because it's like everybody's now figuring out that Elvis was 24 and he was a groomer. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah, that's
what
been hard
everybody
to
did in the
say.
60s. Like, I'm not saying it's okay, but it's like, yeah, like
I
listen
don't
to
know
the
that
freaking lyrics.
everybody did that.
Right.
Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis did that.
Yeah, all the freaking famous people did that. It was ridiculous. Led Zeppelin, like, David Bowie even. Like,
Yeah.
so like everybody's like hating on Elvis, and that is a legitimate reason to be upset with Elvis. So, I think I would probably bring something to drink. Maybe some grape soda or
Mhm.
strawberry soda. He looks like he might be like a Faygo type of guy.
Yeah. Whoop whoop.
So thank you for this holy transmission. Maybe we should play it backwards and see if there's any hidden messages.
Yeah, there's an idea.
We have the best cult in the whole world. We truly do. Not just because they send us prizes, but we love to receive prizes. So we also send prizes from our cult.
Yeah, I had fun doing some tarot for people. So
Yeah. And I've heard everybody loved it and was like, dude, on point.
naturally,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. We know. So yeah, you can join the cult. $1 is all it takes. You can see all of our bonus crap, see all of this stuff first, and we'll send you a sticker in the mail when you join till we're out of stickers.
We're all over the place, people. It's just
Always.
chaos.
Yeah.
All chaos all the time.
It's because our lives are chaotic. Our life is chaotic. Someday it'll calm down.
Yeah.
Maybe. What would we know what to do though if our lives weren't chaotic?
Yeah, I don't know. It would be spooky.
I really like if I didn't have to look at my planner every weekend to like figure out what the hell I'm supposed to be doing. I don't even know what I would do with myself with like a day off.
If I unexpectedly end up with a day off or something and I have nothing to do and I'm all left to my own devices, I'm like, I don't even know what. Like I've gotten better at it, but like the first couple of times that happened were like, Pam went away and my son wasn't here, and I was just like, I'm just here by myself. Like, what do I can do anything I want, I guess. What? I guess take a nap, maybe? I don't know.
You should burn.
Yeah. But he gets all freaked out if he's home alone with me.
He just had a birthday.
He did. He's the birthday boy.
Birthday Bernie.
It's my birthday. I can do whatever I want. So his birthday is actually tomorrow, but we had to celebrate this weekend.
Hi, it's SJ from the Holy Donut Revival Hour, and I have a favor to ask of you. I have a friend who is in some danger of losing their home. They're a wonderful family, and I decided to try to help by doing a vintage auction. Those of you that may not know me from the web show Holy Donut Revival Hour might know me from my vintage business and antique business, which is known as Mojo's Vintage Boutique. I have handpicked 20 items. Some of them are vinyl records from my personal collection, as well as top-notch vintage treasures. I've tried to get a little bit of everything for everyone. Christmas is almost here. This is a great opportunity for you to get some shopping done and help a family in need. You'd be helping a married couple, their dog, and their 2 rabbits stay in their home. For details on the auction, most of them are rated at $10 for a starting bid. Please have a visit. There's a QR code at the end of the video. If you also just want to type in 32 auctions / it's mouse, MAUS, and then house, HOUSE. Check it out. Thanks for watching and for trying to help a family stay in their home for the holidays.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Went to Salem for.
Yeah. Tell us about Salem, because I watched a documentary the other day. One of the true crime bloggers that I like actually went to Salem and took videos, and it was a freaking show. And I was like, I would get in a fight if I went to Salem in October just from people trying to touch me. Like,
yeah, well, I lived there for a little while. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe a year or two.
What's it like living there?
Cool. It's pretty cool because it's a walkable city.
Pretty.
If you live near where everything is, like Essex Street area, Essex and Washington Street, that's where a lot of the museums are, and like the PVD Essex Museum and Salem Cinema and all that stuff. So I lived kind of on the other side of the park from all that stuff. So like 5 minutes walking, I'm right in the thick of everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, and at the other end of my street was a little bay. It wasn't the nicest bay, but it was like across from the marina that you could see in Beverly. So I could walk down to like a little beach area and have my coffee in the morning, and then I could walk into town. So I like walkable areas like that. It's pretty cool. And the streets themselves, like some of the streets you can't even drive on. They're only meant for walking because they're cobblestone or brick streets. It's a cool looking place. But yeah, from pretty much mid-September through mid-November,
wow,
the place is swamped with tourists. Like it doesn't even end with Halloween, really. It's just like tourism like crazy through there. So, I mean, after living through that and just trying to commute to a job from Salem during that time of year, and, cursing all the drunk people in costumes that were stumbling around, yeah, I kind of swore off ever going there during that time of year. But it was me and Pam's anniversary, and we had a concert that we were going to go to in Beverly, which is the town next door.
Nice.
The concert got canceled, but I was like, you know what? Like, I took the day off because we were gonna be heading into Salem country. Why don't we just go to Salem anyway?
There
Let's
you
just
go.
go do it, you know? So, and I figured during the week, if we had gone on the weekend, it would have been, it would have been way too much. But
Yeah.
even during the week, it was still a lot of people. It was, a lot of people milling about. But I got some pretty primo parking, right across the street from the Samantha statue. For those who don't know, there's a statue of Samantha, for Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha, and it's right in the town square at the corner of Essex and Washington Street.
Didn't
So
they redo that statue? Like the first one was hideous, and they're like, no, go do it again.
yeah, I think so because
Yeah.
making a statue out of bronze is like uh, really unflattering. Like, especially if you don't know what you're doing, I guess. Like there was a statue made of Lucille Ball at one point.
I remember
That was
that one. It totally was
yeah,
cursed.
horrifying. The Elizabeth Montgomery one isn't bad. They may have had to do it more than once, but I think it was actually in an episode of the show, and
Interesting.
then they donated it to the town of Salem, and they were like,
Oh,
"Oh, thanks. Like, I don't know
okay.
what we're gonna do," because it was kind of before they adopted that as like their main tourism driver.
Right.
It's like obviously based on the Salem witch trials. Didn't really involve witches at all. It was really involved mass hysteria more than anything,
Right.
and none of that really happened in Salem. It happened in Old Salem Village, which is in the current day Danvers, Massachusetts,
That's funny.
which is near Salem, but not Salem. So
The criticism of this blogger, which I again, like I love this channel, right? Like I'm not hating, but it's like he was talking about how he found it so disturbing that like people were like partying literally right on top of like the bones of people that were murdered. And I was like, well, I've never been to Salem, so I don't know if that's actually true or not. But I was like, dude, you're a true crime blogger. Like,
there's a small cemetery that's right. All that stuff is right around where that
okay,
cemetery is. That's where like Giles Corey is buried. He's the guy that they just kept putting stones on his chest and crushed
crushed
him to
him.
death. There's a lot of history packed into like a couple city blocks right there.
Yeah.
Like that's where Nathaniel Hawthorne lived, and some of his stories were based. Like the Green Gables were right there, and all that other stuff. As a city, they've kind of I don't know if it's a direct result of the statue or not, but or
Yeah.
just the history, but they've kind of owned. Well, you know what? I think Laurie Cabot set up shop there and kind
Okay.
of took it back for witches back in like the 60s or 70s. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure when she started up. But yeah, that's kind of it's called Witch City now. You like driving around and like there's like the Witch City auto repair and like
Yeah.
uh there's an ice cream shop that has like some kind of witch related name that I always thought was really funny. Right on the edge of Salem. So
The people he
uh
was interesting or interviewing too were really interesting because there was this lady, she was an older lady, probably in her 60s, and she had on one of those t-shirts that says, "We're the granddaughters of the witches you couldn't burn," and
yeah.
the blogger it's like that's the cringe white lady. Like, ugh. Anyway, so he actually goes up to this lady and he's like, "Hi, are you here, visiting in town?" Like, and she's like, "Oh no, my family's from here. They killed my grandmother." And he's like, "Oh, so your shirt is like legit?" And she's like, "Yep." And like she's like all proud, and I was like,
Now that you
"That's
mention it,
life."
there was a pretty interesting article I found that like a lot of people in Hollywood can actually trace their roots back to people who were killed because they were accused of witchcraft. And Lucille
Right.
Ball was one of them. I think Lucille
Oh,
Ball's ancestors were.
well, I know that, and no
So,
judgment. I know that Lucille Ball started out as a call girl. Um,
is she? Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
She was
that.
in with the mob a little bit. They kept it kind of quiet, but she had a baby out of wedlock too.
Huh. Pre
Yeah,
Desi?
yeah.
Before Desi was in the picture?
And then
Wow.
Desi, who did he take? Desi took someone for an abortion
So
right
seems like
before.
this is the hot gossip
The
of
hot 80-year-old Hollywood gossip.
this is the Hollywood Babylon part of the
I
Holy
love
Donut
that trash
Revival.
book. I've read Hollywood Babylon so many times. It's garbage.
Yeah.
Oh, total garbage.
But yeah, okay, well here's fun Lucy trivia. Is
Okay.
do you know what got her on TV?
No.
She had a friend of hers that died, came to her in a dream and told her that she should go to TV instead of try to get into the movies.
Interesting.
And so this is like pre Desilu Productions, pre I Love Lucy. Because TV was kind of a new medium at the time, and it was
Right.
like, not really sure if that was going to work out. But and I'm gonna try to remember this woman's name. It's a good friend of hers that died in a plane crash.
Was she married to Clark Gable? That one? Lombard?
Yes, Carol
Lombard.
Lombard. You got it. Yep, yep. Because she had just filmed "To Be or Not to Be," movie with Jack Benny and a bunch of other people. That's an awesome movie. I would recommend that.
Okay.
It's about like a theater company in World War II as like the Germans start moving in Poland, and like yeah, it's awesome. It's a comedy, but it's kind of like a comedy like adventure 40s, like while the war was happening. And I guess like while during that sometime during that film's release, Lombard was on a plane that crashed. So she came to Lucy in a dream and told her that she should go to TV instead of try to do the movies.
Wow.
So and then the rest is history.
Yeah. Huh. No, I never heard that about Carol Lombard coming to her in a dream. That's really interesting.
Referenced it in interviews, but like very briefly. Like there's not a hell of a lot of detail. It's just Lucy saying like yeah, but interesting stuff. What other 80-year-old Hollywood dirt do we have?
We talked about Elvis. They're like come to the geriatric show. We're just The
reason I brought up Salem though, because I did bring something out. Because I went to the Talking Board Museum in Salem.
Oh,
and that was
I am
super fun.
so jealous.
Because that's kind of what you got to do, because that is a place, like that town is mobbed. Like the streets are mobbed with people, and they're all going to like the Witch Dungeon Museum or like Count Orlok's, which was really cool. That was like a horror movie wax museum. We went there. They're all driving to like the big touristy spots, and then like the Talking Board Museum is hidden in the back of a store. And when you walk in the store, it's like literally all Harry Potter stuff. And I'm like, this is lame. And then you pay to get in and get behind the curtain, and there's just like talking boards from all over. So we can insert some pictures, but he has the printing plate for the original Parker Brothers Ouija boards. That were made in Salem, like the actual printer's plate for that. And the guy that was there, John, was it's like his personal collection, and he was like more than happy to just kind of like talk to us and just kind of talk about the history behind all talking boards. Talk about the history. Talk about the history.
So when AP and I stopped recording, AP's wife Pam came in, and she showed him an item that was a witch puzzle that was on top of a bookshelf where she was in the other room while we were recording, that flew off and hit her in the head when we were talking about these spirit boards and Salem. So that's kind of interesting. Wonder what it means.
And he's one of these guys with like super specific interests, like hyper focused on just spirit board communication. So if you go too far afield from it, he's just like, well, I don't really know about that stuff, because it's kind of outside of the he knows about like spiritualism and some of this stuff, but it's just kind of like I started asking him like, do you know what kind of spirit boards George Hunt Williamson was using to contact aliens in the 1950s? He's like, no. He's like, I don't know anything about that. I'll have to look into it.
There you go.
But he did have some for sale, and I saw one that was most of them were $250 or higher. And this one was 30, so this was the one I was obviously going to get, but it is pretty awesome anyway.
So
because
awesome.
It is the Osiris board.
So awesome. $30 is a good deal too, because I got on eBay immediately after I saw what you got.
Did you find any?
Yeah, but they go for more than $30.
Yeah. This was, I guess, made. We're gonna do a little unboxing now.
Yeah.
This was made in the UK. So it says
Okay.
Invicta Plastics, OB Leicester, England, made in England, 1980. It's all shiny plastic. It's like
That's
heavy
crazy.
duty plastic. So basically what it is it's a whole chart. Like, oh, I just dumped it out. It's a chart like this where it's got all these spots where you put the cards, and each of
Oh.
them has a little star. So each of the cards has holes punched in it, and the
Oh.
hole lines up with the star, and then you have to read like, so that's the way that works. But
Okay.
it's pretty involved. Like, I did a little bit for myself, but I didn't get into it too much. If we figure out a way, maybe I'll read a fortune for someone
There you go.
uh, with this. But I love that the future element here has a flying saucer on it. Like, it's so
And the
cool.
past is a bird. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's got heron
Well,
maybe.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, super interesting stuff.
That's incredible.
I've never seen anything quite like it, so I had to have it. We'll definitely be
I had
playing
a
around.
Ouija board in the last vintage sale that I did, and there was this poor woman came by, and um it was Parker Brothers, but it was one of the ones that was like the special edition with the wood planchette, whatever, like the deluxe or whatever. And she came over and she's like, "Did you ever use it?" And I'm like, "Not this one, but I've used them." And she started asking questions, and she was convinced, absolutely convinced, that her brother died in a motorcycle accident because he used one 2 years prior to the accident. And
Mhm.
I hope that I convinced her that that is not that's not why your
Yeah,
brother had an unfortunate accident. There's so much fear over these boards. Like, it's just
yeah.
hilarious that it's become in our culture like a thing to be feared. It's like it's a piece of plastic or cardboard or, like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and it is a game. It's a game that was, well, to be fair, tarot was a game too. A lot of that has to do with the push during the 70s to have a return to traditionalist Catholicism in the form of, people like Father Malachi Martin and Lorraine Warren, and the movie The Exorcist
Yeah.
prominently features the Ouija board. That's how Captain Howdy is reached, and it turns out to be Pazuzu.
And Pazuzu's not even a
Who-
demon. Like, he's a
Yeah, an actual
positive
attack.
influence. Yeah.
Yes, if you look at up Pazuzu in ancient Mesopotamian pantheon, is kind of a fertility
Right.
protector of the grains and crops, right? Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Has absolutely nothing to do with demons or misfortune or anything. It's actually the exact opposite.
Right. I don't think Pazuzu is really in the market for possessing the bodies of
Young
teenage
girls.
girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was 12 years old, when I saw Ed and Lorraine Warren at a
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
local library, 12-year-old me dragged to the local library to see Ed and Lorraine Warren give a presentation.
Who took you?
My mom.
That's awesome.
My mom and my friend's mom and my friend and I got dragged there. And it was kind of weird because, like, my mom's Catholic. She's still Catholic, and I grew up in a haunted house, and my mom saw firsthand a lot of spooky stuff there. My mom's had plenty of spooky experiences, but I could see my mom being interested. But my friend's mom was hyper intellectual, pseudo intellectual, really. Like, this is a woman that I think left a lasting impact on me, to in the sense that I never really want to appear as elitist and snobbish and be wrong like she was about a lot of things. You know what I mean? Somebody that flaunts their college education and then still manages to be wrong. Like, so she's hyper rational, materialistic, and she'd make fun of my mom. Funny story about her: she made fun of my mom for burying a statue of Saint Joseph in the front garden when we were trying to sell the house that I
I
grew up
guarantee you
in.
it worked.
It did work, and also while she was in the process of making fun of my mom about it, she tripped over the front step and sprained her ankle.
Went up to St. Joseph.
And then went
That's
to dig
hilarious.
St. Joseph up, and he was no longer there, which is kind of strange. But so anyway, I remember not wanting to go. I really didn't want to be there. And I don't know why. It's just like I didn't really put together who they were at first, but I thought it was going to be stupid. I was just
Yeah.
being a punk. I'm like, this is going to be stupid.
I mean, it
And I
probably
remember
was, but
I brought an X-Men comic book with me, and I
okay.
very clearly remember the issue of X-Men that it was. And my friend's mom got mad and took it away from me because I was being rude and reading it while they were talking. And she put it under her chair, and I just remember like looking down and seeing her heels stepping on it, and like removing the cover from the staple, like ripping where the staple was. Like with comic books,
Oh.
you just don't do that, man. So, um, but yeah, Ed and Lorraine Warren gave their presentation. I remember very specifically. There's Ed Warren, and he goes, "Now a lot of you have one of these in your house. Well, you have one of these in your house, you know, one of these Ouija boards, and you think it's all fun and games. But if you look at the back right here, it says made in Salem, Massachusetts. That should tell you everything you need to know." And I'm like rolling my eyes. Like 12-year-old me is like rolling my eyes, like, okay, all right. So the entire town of Salem.
12-year-old AP is clearly smarter than Ed Warren.
Yeah, and okay, so then the weird thing is, to be fair,
And you weren't
by
a
the
pervert.
end,
So hey, there's that too.
yeah, I didn't even know about that until like the last year or two. Like,
Yeah.
I think it was
too
only
bad.
like a year or two ago that I learned about that. That's messed up.
Yeah.
Because I guess I never really paid that much attention. I always
Right.
kind of
Like
pegged
they're
them
hacks. Who
at,
cares? Yeah.
yeah. But the thing is, I'm sympathetic to hacks and hoaxers. Like I really that's not a huge turnoff for me. Like I love Gray Barker. I have a certain amount of affection for Uri Geller. You know, I'm gonna admit right now, I actually really like Uri. He's entertaining. Come on, the
He's
dude
all
is
in.
entertaining.
You know, anybody that's all in and literally believes their own crap, like, yeah, okay.
Right. But the Warrens being hoaxers doesn't really bother me. Their manipulation and taking advantage of people, especially
Yeah.
vulnerable people, that's where it becomes a problem. Because I mean, that all changed for me being something where I could think, okay, well, some of this is fake. You know, they just want to make a name for themselves, sell some books. But that's not even really the whole picture. It's just there was an actual quote from, I'm not sure if it was Jay Anson, but it was somebody like that was a ghostwriter ghostwriting the book for them and interviewing the people who were suffering from a demonic infestation. And they kind of went to Ed Warren and they're like, hey, these people are very seriously mentally ill. Like there's some domestic problems and drug abuse going on. And I think that's really, and he's like, look, I know what's going on. Your job is to write a story about demons and say that it's demons. Like, you know, and I can't remember who that writer was, but it was one of the ghostwriters for him. And it's just like, when I heard that, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like there's people suffering and they really just kind of exploited the crap out of them
Yeah. And I
for
love
their
how they
own.
would like get a book contract and then get mad at the publisher and just photocopy their own crap and sell their own bootleg versions at their events.
Yeah, weird. But I don't know. It's kind of surreal because, and then in my memory, like Ed just seemed kind of avuncular and sweet, you know, and Lorraine just seemed like a nice little old lady. And like you kind of liked them by the end.
Right.
By the end of the presentation, they did like a Q&A and they were like funny and kind of charming. And it was like, it seemed like they were almost, they could have been like really nice people. But I mean, all bets are off with the whole, you know, 14-year-old
Yeah.
girl living at their house.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's kind of super, super. And I really don't care who gets mad at me for saying that because it's
Yep.
pretty well
Nope.
documented.
Yeah. We are
But
anti-nonce on the
a
Holy
lot
Donut
of,
Survival Hour.
yeah, a lot of, yeah, no nonsense allowed.
Nope.
Um,
Don't care how
yeah,
nice
I
you
mean,
are. You do something to
all
offend, done.
pretty much all of modern paranormal investigating, as far as reality TV goes, there's like a filter of that. You know, it's more or less like the Taps team has strong connections back to very specifically those two. You know,
Yep. And that
And
damn
it's
doll, the freaking Raggedy Ann doll.
right. And yeah, and it's and it's and it really, I mean, Adam Sane from the Conspiranormal podcast put together a really good case for them doing this specifically to promote traditionalism within the Catholic Church. Like the people that basically don't recognize the authority of the Pope. They don't recognize Vatican II. They think everything was better before. And they want to go back to that. Like the bishop that the Warrens went to, you know, that was yeah, I read about this guy before. Mackenzie, was that his name? The guy in Connecticut. Yeah. McKenna. Yeah, Father McKenna. Yeah. And he was a bishop because he broke off and had his own splinter version of traditionalist Catholic congregation, you know.
You got to be pretty messed up to break off when the Catholics aren't conservative enough. Like, think about this for a second.
Yeah, the Catholics in the 80s weren't conservative enough. You wanted to go back to the Catholicism of the 50s. That was the real stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I guess if you have a 14-year-old girl hidden in your house, you know, you do want them barefoot and pregnant. So.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea, I guess, is to prove that the devil is in the world and demons are in the world in order to drive people back to the church. That was the whole.
The demons are in the church, if you ask me, but I digress.
Well, yep. Yeah, and this is a whole FAFO theme going on in this whole episode, I guess. This is the Ishtar. And that's kind of what Cagliostro was all about. And in a lot of ways, Blavatsky too is just like there's a whole modern current of magicians, occultists, and people using these themes to basically upend society, you know, like upend like the old traditional orders that have been harmful, you know.
Yep.
Doesn't end well for all of them. I mean, Cagliostro ended up in a jail cell because the Inquisition in Rome put him there. But yeah, I mean, there are these structures. You talk about the world prior to Cagliostro's time and after. I mean, you had the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and those are both kind of part and parcel results of, if we were to believe the thing I read about Saint Germain initiating him into the Illuminati, and Emanuel Swedenborg was there. You know, that you know, I don't think it's as simple as that, but there are like secret brotherhoods and there are magical effects that are a result of these currents, and they have their rippling effects throughout society, and toppling monarchs, toppling institutions, and some of them, I'm sorry, just need to go. So thanks, Ishtar.
Thanks, Ishtar. You're the best. All praise to Ishtar.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where Ishtar stands. Did we want to do a liminal Earth?
Do it. Let's do it.
Because I got one that I think you're gonna like.
Excellent.
So this one takes place in Cyprus. Which is interesting. I kind of just kept hitting the random story button until I got a good one.
You could do that. So visit liminal.earth, put that in your browser, and go add your stories to the map, look for some weird stories around you, or just hit the refresh button like we do to look for some interesting things that people have submitted.
Yeah, you'll see a button at the top that says random story, and you can actually use this as a form of divination. If you want to. I don't know if that's been suggested before, but yeah, pick a random story and then think about how the elements of this story might apply to your life and the things they surprise you. So this story, like I said, Cyprus, 2009 or 2010, and it's called Cypriot Vision.
Okay.
The submitter, Nat, says, when I was 6, this shape appeared to me at night. At the time, and still, to be honest, I identified it as Anubis, the ancient Egyptian god of death. He's known to accompany the dead to the underworld. But really, it was just an ever-changing, ever-shifting mass of something, wax, air, I don't know. It woke me up by touching my shoulder. I was very sick, and looking back now, I could have died. I kept screaming, "No, leave me alone. I'm not ready to go. Go away," and stuff like that. Ran into my parents' room in a delirium, and he followed me. My mom, spiritual, who was low key freaked out by me, lit a candle, and I passed out on the bed immediately. So that's the story.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Anubis, amorphous Anubis in the room. So
now see, and like, I'm not going to call Nat a liar. That's not what I'm saying here. But if you're really that sick, you could be like having a fever sort of dream. Not that it doesn't invalidate it, but it's like, is this a fever thing happening?
yeah, when you're that young too, it's you have to wonder. I have heard plenty of stories like that, like amorphous kind of like black inky shape,
Right.
Uh, so
That's related specifically to people being ill or just in general?
I think more in general
Right, yeah, me
with
too.
right odd entities.
Right.
It's interesting to pick up on Anubis, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's one of those weird things that, personally, you don't really talk about. When I was little, I've been a notorious insomniac my entire life, which is why I'm always on the prison planet, Reddit, as we know.
Right.
And
Oh, I thought you meant that's why you haven't been able to escape the archons and
that too. I mean, clearly. So I'm toast with the Archon.
insomniacs are notoriously victims of the archons.
Right, right. But it's like I would lay in bed at night and I had this my mom just wanted me to be a Barbie doll, her own like personal Barbie doll. And she got me this canopy bed. And this is early 80s. So it's like all poofy and it has this poofy yellow like drapey cover and like, whatever.
Mhm.
And this tells you exactly how it goes because she set it up and I got in bed and she's like, "Oh, you look just like a princess." And I'm like, "Do you think that I could hang from those bars?" And that's how our entire life went. Anyway, I did not hang from my canopy bed because I would have destroyed it, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I just lay, when you're a kid, I don't know if you played these games when you just couldn't sleep. I just could sleep and I just start playing, games by myself. And there were two games that I would play. I would close my eyes really tight. So I would get the like star looking, like, white flash and I'd pretend I was flying through space. That was like game number one. And then game number two was that my bed was a boat and I always had my cat with me and me and the cat were on a boat and the floor is hot lava, like everybody's played that game. But then when I was playing the boat game, the interesting thing that would happen is when I would fall asleep, the like imaginary game would sort of bleed over into my dreams and I would start to like actively dream that I was on the boat. And I could never see anything in the dreams or even when like it was also just my imagination when I'm laying there because it's dark in my room. And I would start thinking, "Oh, we're on the boat. We're just on the boat." And then at some point I would fall asleep. And when I would fall asleep, I would still be in darkness, but I could hear water in the dream. And there was a man that would always come and talk to me. And I would get really excited because I knew if I thought about thinking about the boat hard enough, that the man would come in my dream and I could talk to the man. And I really started to get into this when I was about 8 because my grandpa died when I was 8 and I was really obsessed with, is heaven real? Growing up Catholic, is he really dead? Can I talk to him? And they're, when you're Catholic, you're like, "Oh, you can still talk to him. He can still hear you. He's your guardian angel," all of this crap. So I used to be like, is it my grandpa that is coming to visit me, on the boat? But it wasn't his voice. It didn't seem like him, but it had sort of like the same kind of energy. It was like a very calm, just presence. And we would just talk and just talk about like my life and talk about school and talk about my teacher, just talk. And then I would wake up. And I didn't dream about the guy on the boat all the time. But as I got older and I started to learn about the Egyptian stuff and the Duat and the journey into the underworld and all of that stuff, I was like, crap, this kind of sounds a lot like a kid on a journey, like I was like, was this Anubis energy because it had that very paternal sort of patient
Well, right. What it
energy. My dad
reminds
was
me
not
of.
patient. He was a good man, but he was not patient. That's where I get it
Oh,
from, right? And it
yeah.
was like I would just pepper this man with questions, and I remember the chuckle. I would just like, and I was like, they just would liked my precociousness, where my
Hmm.
precociousness would exhaust my parents, right? Like my constant questioning, why is it
Right.
like this? Why?
Yeah.
But what about this? And the stuff that would exhaust my parents. And so I used to I'm not saying that like it was a real phenomenon, but I would like guide myself as a child, I guess, into like an interactive dream experience with this paternal type of energy that I would be on the boat with.
Hmm. Well,
So, but I never did get to see it. It was always dark.
yeah, it's pretty wild because the boat itself, like a small boat like that, especially, um, it has associations with the underworld. Like it's one thinks of Chiron crossing the river Styx in his
Right.
little ferry, you know. Um,
And so I'm like
so it's
trying to
like,
talk to my dead grandpa, and it's like, well, you don't get grandpa, but you get this instead. I don't know.
oh, it's like psychopomp training school.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't know. I was a weird kid though. I mean, obviously, but I sleepwalked for a while till I was about 10. It was to the
Huh.
point where they actually took me to the doctor because we lived in a big house and I would be up in the back bedroom, go all the way downstairs, see what my parents are doing. They could tell I was asleep just because my effect was kind of flat, but my eyes would be open. I could actually answer questions. And they'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." And they'd be like, "You're asleep. You need to go back upstairs and go back to bed." And I go, "Okay." And I'd go back up the stairs and go to sleep.
Hmm.
Well, twice when I was a kid, I woke up in the backyard with my
Yeah,
blanket and my pillow
that's scary. Yeah.
under a tree, under my
Hmm.
favorite tree. We had a cherry tree that was my favorite tree. And I used to hang out in it all the time because I had the perfect branch with like the whoop that would like hold your butt. So I'd get up there and I'd read. And I would wake up underneath the tree. And one time the sprinkler woke me up. The sprinklers
Oh,
came on
geez.
early in the morning. And I was out
Wow.
there sleeping under the tree with my comforter and my pillow. And I have no memory of me walking downstairs in my pajamas to go to sleep under the damn tree. So like my
Yeah.
sleep has always been broken, but that reminded me so much of like the same energy of like, it's like, why would a kid think this is Anubis? Like I
Yeah.
all these years
Well,
later.
yeah. I mean, maybe the iconography is more familiar to a kid in Cyprus than it
Right.
would be
Good
here.
point.
That would be my first guess. But yeah, no, it's an interesting story. Yeah, the connection is right there. I'm not as well versed on the Egyptian deities as you are, but is Anubis kind of like a Grim Reaper figure? My understanding was Anubis was the one that you meet on the other side.
Right.
That's
He
kind
takes you, he comes and meets you, and you journey through the underworld on the boat, and then you end up judged in front of he's the master of the scale. And you're
of,
hoping to go to Osiris. They weigh your heart against feather of Mot, the feather of
right.
truth, to see
Yeah.
if your sins are, heavier than if you've been a liar. They also pepper you, during the test of the underworld with, have you done this? Have you done this? And you're supposed to have all of these answers ready to give the gods when you're interrogated under there. And
Hmm.
then they, yes, weigh your heart against the feather, and there's the bricks. Observe this. There's a goddess of bricks. You just kind of float there and chill and watch the hot weighing action. You've been a liar or a cheat or haven't been a good person, then you get fed to the Ta'amet, which is a god. It's like a hippo lion monster, and they eat your soul and you cease to exist. Ampu or Anubis is the one that takes you down to be judged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew he was the one with the scales and stuff. I just didn't know what that first part was. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is pretty interesting. It's a interesting story. And also, not to move on from this too quickly, but I did have an update about the Blessed Virgin Mary at the donut shop.
Yes, you got some more information from Karen?
Yes, Karen, just regular old
Karen.
Karen.
Okay, Karen. Sorry, we messed it up. Karen.
Sorry, we mispronounced the name. I feel like I knew somebody that spelled that way, but it was Kari. you know, without
It's
the
Karen.
N at all.
Okay.
So it's Karen. Yeah, it's just pronounced Karen.
But what's the
So
follow-up from Karen?
we got some answers to the questions that we posed. So
Ooh.
anybody that didn't watch the last episode, shame on you. Go watch it right now.
Oh, please.
But
We're not going to guilt anybody to watching our crap.
also join our cult and give us money.
Okay, we will guilt you into that. But no, just kidding.
Patreon.com. So the answer to what was said, because remember we didn't know
The
the
word,
exact
right.
words, says, I thought I included this detail in the story, don't remember, but as soon as the Virgin Mary left, I couldn't remember what she said to grab my attention or what the cardboard sign said in exact words. I was asking for money content-wise, but the actual words used to convey that were gone. So I think that's pretty compelling in and of itself. It's kind of like when people encounter the Men in Black and they can't remember certain details of it. Yeah, you get the idea of it. It's something that's directly communicated to you, feelings-wise and meaning-wise, but nothing specific that you could quote afterward.
Right.
So,
well, Karen, I think you must have passed the test. If that was, I've had a couple of moments like that where it's like something has crossed my path that needed help, and I feel later like it was maybe like a test of compassion. So if you're being tested, I believe you passed that one with flying colors, my friend.
Right. She also says, I will add the clothes were modern. They did not look modern. I was just desperately looking for machine stitching on the hem of what she was wearing as part of my "is this really happening" response.
Gotcha.
I thought I saw some. Harder to say what she was actually wearing this far out from it happening, but it was sort of robe or dress like.
Yeah, there must have been something mysterious about it because that's just normal to just assume that.
Yeah. So it says at the same time, she doesn't really match up with any artistic depiction I've seen of her. There was just this really overpowering sense of confirmation that it was her, that I had to constantly check things to make sure that what I was perceiving was real.
Wow.
Which I think is the most paranormal thing other than her appeering next to me completely unnoticed. A lot of spookiness to it. Yeah. And she just kind of vanishes at the end of it, right? So she goes outside and then there's nowhere for her to go very quickly, especially carrying a baby, and she's not there anymore. You know? She wasn't like begging and hanging out, waiting for somebody else to walk by to ask for change or something, you know. So
and your just kind of glosses over it and moves on because you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, this has been packed full of stuff. We're all over the map tonight. So
because our lives have been chaos again.
Yeah, there's no formula here. You're getting authentic madness,
right?
Authentic grade A madness from AP and SJ. So
that's it. Well, we'll interview some people soon too.
Yeah, we'll get some other people in here. So it's
we're trying to work out the bugs, right? Like this one should look better. I know the first one was a little hot mess. Like, you know, we've been dealing with goblins. We switched back over to the Zoom instead of other programs. Like we're getting the bugs worked out before we invite people on because like we don't want to waste people's time if it's going to be all jacked up. Yeah.
We appreciate all the feedback, you know, and I really the only negative feedback I heard was you know, a little glitchiness in audio and stuff like that. That's all the stuff we're addressing now. So
totally
moving forward, and
thanks for hanging in with us. That first episode, it fried my laptop like dead. So it was constructed on like a 20-year-old ThinkPad and 2 phones.
Right, and
so
then our good friend, the Most Reverend Stardog, offered to help stabilize the audio, and then his monitor died.
And then the goblins moved. It's actually pretty funny. All we could do is just laugh. Like, yeah, okay, cool. So that's why. So hopefully now we got the bugs worked out, getting there. And as soon as we get it like looking and sounding pristine, then we're going to get other people on here. So
yeah, so we'll close this episode with
believe in yourself, believe in the donut power.
May the blessings of Fat Elvis and all the frosting sprinkled covered goodness of the Holy Donut guide you.
Amen.
Amen.
Till
And
next
goblins
time.
be gone.